This question says last year election were held in all the four zones east, west, north and south of Goa. The following table shows the data related to votes polled across four zones of Goa in the recently held elections. The legend tells us that the total number of votes polled in, let's say, north zone is 520 given. Total number of valid votes is 460. So the difference, that is 60, is the number of votes that were invalid. Number of valid votes by male voters is given as 235. So a total of 520 votes were polled, out of which 460 were valid. Out of this 460, 235 are valid by male. So obviously the remaining 225 are going to be the valid votes by female. So if we divide this, we'll have 520 out of those 460 are valid votes. The remaining 60 are invalid votes. Out of these 460 valid votes, 235 are by male. So obviously the remaining 225 are by female. Now 265 votes are polled by females. So if 265 votes were polled by females and 225 are the valid votes, so it means the 40 votes which were invalid are by female and the 20 remaining are by male. Now writing down this tree in a tabular format for all the four zones, we will have a crystal idea about what all is happening among the people. Next thing says Election Commission of India declares a zone as developed electoral zone if it satisfies the following two conditions. Number of votes polled by female voters should not be less than the votes polled by male voters in that zone by more than 5%. So it should not be more than 5%. Now for both male and female, valid votes cast should be at least 90% of the respective votes polled. So there are two conditions to be met. Male and female should cast at least 90% of the respective votes polled, and the number of votes polled by female voters should not be less than the votes polled by male voters in that zone by more than 5%. If we look at the first question, they ask you how many zones in Goa declares a developed electoral zones. So it means we need to completely draw the table and put in the data and accordingly calculate. So let's draw the table first. So there are four zones. So let's say this is one zone, the second zone, the third zone, and all. The conditions. Let's say zone over here. We talk about north, east, south, and west. The total number of votes polled in north is 520, in east is 663, in south is 640, and in west is 690. Out of this total number of votes polled, the valid votes, their number, so the number of valid votes is given as 460, 611, 586, and 636. Now number of male votes total is 255, 340, 331, and 353. Out of this, number of valid votes by male is 235, 308, 298, and 320. Now next is number of female votes. If we calculate from the table, we'll get 265, 323, 309, and 337 as the values, and number of valid votes by female gender is 225, 303, 288, and 316. Now in north zone, the percentage of female votes the percentage of female votes, that is 265, which are valid, so that is 225, is less than 90% of the votes polled. So there is a difference of 40. So obviously this is less than 90% of the total votes polled. If you look at the South Zone, the number of votes polled by female voters is less than the number of votes polled by female voters. So this difference is that of 21. This is less than 5% of the this is less than the number of votes polled by male voters, and this is more than 5%, because 10% is 30, 5% is 15, and the difference right now is that of 21. So this is more than 5%. In East and West Zone, both the conditions are satisfied. So if you look at over here, 323 and 340, the number of male votes, the difference is that of 17, which is less than 5%, which is exactly 5% actually. If you look 337 and 353, the difference is that of 16, which is again less than 5%. And if you look at the valid votes condition, this becomes more than 90% of the votes polled by female in both the cases. So East and West, these are the two zones that are declared as developed electoral zones. Let's move to question number 48. It asks, in how many zones was the number of valid votes as percentage of total number of votes polled higher for male voters as compared to that of the female voters? If I look at the North Zone, the female voters valid votes is 225 out of 265, while that of male voters is 235 out of 255. So this value for the female, the denominator is larger than the numerator, so this one is for female and this one is for male. So when you compare the denominator of male versus female, the denominator is larger in female and numerator is lesser. So obviously the male percentage has to be higher. Okay, denominator is larger in female and numerator is lesser, so the fraction has to be lesser. While in the case of East, the female case is 303 out of 323, while that of male is 308 out of 340. So if you look, there is an increase in numerator as well as in the denominator. So male is obviously less than the denominator, the number of female voters. If you look at South Zone, we have 288 out of 309 for female, and we have 298 out of 331 for male. There is an increase of 10 in the numerator, while there is an increase of 22 in the denominator. So the number of male has to be less than number of female. And if you look at the West, we have 316 out of 337, while for male we have 320 out of 353. So the numerator has increased by 2, while the denominator has drastically increased by 16. So this is again less. So only one condition, only one zone it satisfies. So the answer is for North Zone only. So there is only one zone that satisfies this condition. Let's move over to question number 49. In which zone was the number of votes polled by male voters as a percentage of total number of votes polled in that zone the highest? So male voters as a percentage of total votes. So if you look for North, this is 255 out of 520. If you look at East, this is 340 upon 663. If you look at South, this is 331 upon 640. And if you look at West, this is 353 out of 690. So if we compare, the fraction for the South is definitely larger than that of East. So East doesn't count. If you look at South, there is an increase of 22 in the numerator, while there is an increase of 50 in the denominator. so north has to be a lesser value than south. And if you look at north and south, the numerator for from north to south is almost 80 more than it, while the denominator is 120 more than it. So the north fraction has to be less than the value in the south. So the south zone is the right answer, that it is the highest among the fractions that we just saw. Other way of doing it is calculate to the first decimal value and you will have an idea. Let's look at question number 50th. In how many zones was the number of votes polled by female voters more than 25% of the total votes polled by female voters in all the 4 zones together? So let's calculate the total number of female voters that we have. So total number of female voters, as in we need to add all of these 4 values, and remember these 4 values are given in thousands. So let's add. The value comes out to be 265 plus 323 plus 309 plus 337. These all are in thousands. This gives us 1234000. Now 25% of 1234000 is 308500, as in 308.5 in thousands. So we have to look for the values of female voters which is larger than 308.5. So larger than 308.5 we have is East Zone, South Zone and West Zone. So there are 3 zones that follow the question. Hence the answer for the 50th is third.